Aloha mai. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute, welcoming you to Ehana Kako. We're a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network, and I'm so glad you're here today. Do you ever feel that the government is not telling you everything it knows? Do you think the government keeps secrets from us? Well, it's easy to think that about our federal government, but have you thought about our state government here in Hawaii, or our county government, our city governments? Well, there is somebody who thinks long and hard about that. That's because his job is to go and get that information. We live in a state full of sunshine laws and open access to documents, laws that are just beautiful. But once in a while, it's difficult to get information that the government may have, information that people have a right to know. It's Joe Kent's job to go and get that information as a watchdog for the public. We're proud at the Grassroots Institute to have Joe with us. He's the director of one of our divisions called openhawaii.org. Without any further ado, we're going to dive into a little bit of what Joe has learned and talk about policy here in the state of Hawaii. Joe, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much.
Have I ever told you I'm really glad you're on the staff of the Grassroots Institute?
Thank you. That makes me feel good, and I'm glad to work there. Absolutely.
Well, we have all kinds of bright people like you. And what is your purpose in this new division that you've helped us to start called the openhawaii.org?
Well, a while back we were trying to research different things that the government was doing, and we found it was so hard to get information, things that we think that the public should know. Things like where are our tax dollars going, and how much are people making, and how much are different projects, things like that. It was so hard to find that information. I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had a project dedicated solely to finding information that was hard to get?
And now that's available for everybody because you established with your team a website. People can go to that, and news media and members of the public are using it. Joe, it didn't really start with a grand design to have a website and a team and a research division. It kind of started when you were trying to get some hard-to-get information.
I had this idea that I wanted to see how much money are government workers and officials making. And so I called up the government one time. I was on Maui, and I called them up and I said, hi, I'm a concerned citizen, and I was wondering, can I get the information, like salaries for all government employees? And they just started laughing at me.
They laughed at you.
They said, no, of course not. They said, it's all confidential. If you want to know any information about salaries or overtime or benefits, that's all confidential, and we're not allowed to tell you.
Now, you weren't looking for the information on salary about Joe Kamakaviva Ole or Sally Smith or anything like that. You just wanted to know how much of your tax dollars is going to salaries, pensions, benefits.
Right.
That's all, right? General.
I didn't care about the names.
And they told you it was confidential?
They said it's all confidential. We're not allowed to give you anything. They did give me one person, which was the chief of police. I'm not sure why he was different than everyone else.
His salary's in the newspaper already.
Right, yeah.
But at least they gave you something.
Yeah, they gave me something.
But you weren't daunted, were you? This was on Maui County. So you decided to go back and actually find a means to get this information.
Right. Well, I went to a transparency researcher in Nevada.
All right.
His name is Robert Fellner, and he does this kind of work. And he pointed me to something called the Freedom of Information Act.
Let's say that again. Freedom of Information Act, a federal law, right?
A federal law which says that all government documents are open for the public to view and download and share and put in the media, except for some minor exemptions here and there.
For national security purposes, or maybe the confidentiality of an individual.
Exactly.
But that's not what you were looking for.
Right.
So you found that the opportunity to know what our government is paying its workers is covered by the Freedom of Information Act.
Right, exactly.
That everybody has a right to know that.
Exactly. And in Hawaii, we have our own version of the Freedom of Information Act called the Uniform Information Practices Act, or UIPA. So Hawaii has an open records law, and it actually, to tell you the truth, it's pretty good. And so when I was trying to learn about how to submit these requests, it's a little technical to submit an open records request. I submitted 5, 10, 15 requests and got all the requests out there, and then just waited and waited and waited, and I didn't get any response, actually.
So you used the law, the UIPA, that said a citizen has the right to request information from the government. You filled out the forms, you turned them in, and there was no response.
Right, exactly. And so I went to, actually, did you know that Hawaii has a government organization called the Office of Information Practices? Now, the job of the Office of Information Practices is to help individuals like me get information from the government itself. So it seems kind of funny that here we have the government is going to help you get information from the government, but that's how it works.
Well, it is a little bit of an interesting setup. It's kind of like the fox watching the hen house.
Right, you would think so, yeah.
So the law says the government has to be accountable and show these records, but it's the government itself, the state government in this case, that is responsible for enforcing that. Now, you eventually got some fruit out of this, but,
Right.
but there are several things we learned about the Office of Information Practices, and one of them is this, that those folks have a huge backlog, don't they, of requests for information.
Right.
Did they have, when you went down there and talked to them, were there enough people to process this?
Well, no, there was one person there, and she, met me at the door and was very friendly and nice, but she basically said, if I have a legal matter that I want them to help me with, it will basically take more than a year. And so she said, we can help you with getting responses, but beyond that, the backlog is more than a year.
My goodness.
So can you imagine that? There's so many people who are trying to get information out there, and the government organization that is meant to help you get that transparency information has a huge backlog which basically makes it ineffective. I mean, unless you're willing to wait for a whole year for that information.
So if this office that is responsible for enforcing the right of the people to get information from government agencies is manned, underfunded, that's one way in which we don't really, as a state government, comply with the law.
Right, exactly. And it hurts our society as a whole, because our society rests on an informed public. As long as people know what's going on, then they're likely to make the policy decisions with the knowledge that's needed. But if people don't know what's going on, then that's a big problem. How are we going to run our society? Right. And so in the long run, it hurts government itself.
But you were undaunted because you work for an organization whose job it is to actually be undaunted and to go out there and find ways to get information that the public needs. And so tell us the rest of the story.
Well, there's some tricks that you can do to get transparency information. And for those out there that want to try this, there are some things that work better than others. One thing is to copy the Office of Information Practices in your email request to the agency. And also, if you have connections with other lawyers who can help, like I contacted the Civil Beat Law Center for the Public Interest, the director, Brian Black.
Right, and he's been a guest of ours talking about the same issue.
Right.
But go ahead.
He's very good at trying to follow up and make sure the wheels stay in motion. And so if you have that CC'd on your email, a lot of times the agencies sweat a little bit more and get you the information a little quicker. So we actually did get the information that we were looking for. We have all the salaries and overtime and benefits for all the county workers in the state. And we even have state information. Now, we don't have names because actually we wanted to be, that's not what we're looking for, actually, when it comes down to it.
Our purpose is not to expose or embarrass ordinary citizens, but you want to get the data of tens of thousands of county and state workers.
Right.
Because then we can analyze that data.
Exactly.
Then we can answer the question, where is the money from our taxes going, and how is it being spent, and is it being abused?
And when I looked at the data, I found that most of the people in the government are not abusing the system, right? Most public workers are doing just fine, and they're doing what they should be. but there's a few that are doing things that are pretty questionable.
Now, you found out that there were some ways in which people are able to get overtime that ultimately helps to up their pension.
Right.
You want to explain that a little bit?
Well,
and again, this isn't everybody, but enough people are doing it to be a real tax on our system.
Right. Well, for example, we found one person on Maui who was making $83,000 a year as a base salary, and they made $84,000 in overtime and other benefits.
On top of the 83?
On top of the 83. And so they more than doubled their salary for the year.
Okay.
For a total of $170,000 per year. Now, that number is calculated into their pension amount. So the $170,000 is calculated, and if you can double your pay, then you can basically double your pension. Now, the problem with that is with the pension fund right now in the state, the ERS is about 32% underfunded.
The employee retirement system.
The employee retirement system. And so if you have a few people taking the lion's share of the employee retirement system fund, then that's something that's in the public interest to know. But the problem is that we're not allowed to see a lot of times who these people are or what department they're in. They'll only give us the number, for example.
Now, this is really something, because even if you are a high-level government official or a state legislator, it's possible not to know this problem is going on. And in fact, just a year and a half ago, our state legislature discovered that pensions were being jacked up. As a result, more was owed to retirees than had been calculated into the retirement fund. And that was part of the reason that we have such a, or we did at that time, had such a soaring unfunded liability.
Right,
That's
and
something.
when we looked at the pension data, we found that the average pension in Hawaii, the average public pension, is $23,000 per year. And the highest public pension for someone who's a new retiree is $195,000 per year. So you have most people making this much as a pension and a few people making that much as a pension, and you have to ask, what's going on here, and is this in the public interest to know? And shouldn't this be more transparent?
And you know, I really appreciate the spirit with which you've gone about this. You have not just tried to target people because there were high amounts of salary or high amounts of overtime. For example, with the Puna fires, it was a good thing that we could have people, firefighters, ambulance drivers, police officers, availing themselves of overtime. We needed that. But what you're looking for are the exceptions to all of this.
Sometimes it's a great idea to give overtime because it's actually more efficient that way. Even in a free market businesses often give overtime. But what isn't okay is when people can abuse the overtime system. And we're seeing that if you work on the weekends, for example, you can get overtime. There's a lot of different tricks that you can play to rack up the overtime. And we want to see that here in Hawaii. So.
Now, you've done something that actually was not done before until Grassroots Institute's openhawaii.org website put it together. That is, you've gone to every single county.
Right.
And you've gotten this information. Have you gotten it from every single county?
Every county, yep.
Every county. And so now news correspondents, researchers, people who work in the interest of the public, ordinary citizens, can go to openhawaii.org and actually analyze the data.
All this information is on openhawaii.org. And really it's meant for journalists to get the scoop first. But if you're a citizen and want to get the scoop before the journalists even do, you can also go to openhawaii.org and check out what we've dug up.
We should give our viewers a little bit of a warning. If they really want a wonderful website with pictures and articles and user-friendliness, go to our grassrootsinstitute.org, because it's designed for anyone to come in and to read and to learn and to see charts and photos and so forth. But openhawaii.org is really high content level in terms of data. I mean, there are hundreds and thousands of figures and facts and tables and charts. And so it's really for the one who really wants to dive in deep and get a comprehensive picture of the data.
Right, it's a data mine. And if you're looking for a really good story about what's going on behind the scenes of government, visit the site and check out some of the things that actually some journalists haven't picked up on, some of the great wins that we've had. So,
In fact, we could use the help of anybody who's
Right.
interested in researching something to go there and actually start researching it and send us the results. And we'll take a look at them because we would love to be informed as to where our tax dollars are going and whether government is being accountable.
right, well, I mean, our vision at Grassroots is to, help society. And so if other people are using our information to that end, that's something absolutely that we want to support and champion, absolutely.
You know, before we go to a break, I love that story of when you went to Maui, put your tie on,
Oh, yeah.
and went down to the county office.
That's a good tip, by the way. If you're having trouble getting open records, put on a tie, go to the office, and tell you what, it actually works. They were sweating bullets when I showed up.
And it was just little old Joe Kent.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking to Joe Kent, one of the team members of the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii research staff, and he is the head of a project called openhawaii.org. It's a place where hard-to-find data is put onto the web after we've gone out and collected that data from the government, doing everything we need through legal means. And it's part of keeping our government accountable. We'll talk more about this and some other issues when we return to Ehana Kako on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Don't go away.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
I welcome you back to our weekly program called Ehana Kako. Ehana Kako is based upon a venerable Hawaiian saying, E Pule Kako, which means let us pray together. Well, at the Grassroots Institute, we invite people to work together. Ehana Kako means let's work together. And now think of the terrible alternative. If we didn't work together, life would be very difficult to get through, and it would be hard to build a better economy, a better government, a better society. And at ThinkTech Hawaii and the Grassroots Institute, we're committed to doing that. Before I go on, I want to say thanks to Jay Fidel, the staff and the volunteers and the board members of ThinkTech Hawaii. They're making available to the public well over 30 hours of original content that originates in our brand new downtown Honolulu studio. We've moved into a much larger facility here at the Pioneer Plaza. We invite you to visit sometime and take a look at where information comes together, we communicate, we begin dialogues and conversations that go out across the world. Now back to Joe Kent, director of the openhawaii.org program at the think tank called Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. Joe, what other information do you have on openhawaii.org? It's not just pensions and salaries and so forth. It also includes other data.
We've got, actually, we went for some data on the Jones Act, believe it or not.
Oh, very interesting. Well, first, tell our viewers what the Jones Act is.
The Jones Act is a law that makes it illegal to travel between American ports if you are
or to carry cargo for ships to carry cargo.
To carry cargo between American ports if you're not an American ship, basically. So
flagged by an American flag, crewed by an American crew, owned by an American company, and most important, built in the United States.
Right. Now that law was created in 1920, and we wanted to see what the number of ships, the change in the number of ships from 1920 till today. So can you guess do you think the number of ships went up or down?
I've seen the website. I know the answer.
I guess that's a rhetorical question. But actually, the number of ships have dropped like a rock.
Right. We were once one of the largest commercial ship producers in the world. And when we went into World War I, World War II, well, that got fortified because of the military shipping might. And it's almost been as if there has just been a straight line decline.
It's a straight line down.
I think as of last year, we were producing less than 1% of the tonnage of big shipping vessels across the world.
That's right. We actually have less than 100 Jones Act ships today, where before we used to have thousands of Jones Act ships. And so it's really dropped. And so people who argue that the Jones Act preserves all the shipping, I mean, it's hard to argue with the numbers that we've dug up.
Sure,
so.
and certainly there's a lot of research that
Sure.
is still to be done on the Jones Act, and that's one of the things we're pursuing at the Grassroots Institute. So we don't say we have all the answers,
Right.
but when it comes to certain factual claims, you're able to document some of them. Tell us what you have on the Jones Act on the openhawaii.org site.
On Open Hawaii, we have the federal shipping records of Jones Act ships from 1940 to today. And so
you don't have enough to do it in the evening when you go home?
Well, we're also looking for, we're also submitting a FOIA request for the HART rail system. So and the check register for the rail, and as well as for the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission. And so we actually did a FOIA request for the check register for the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission, and we actually got something back, believe it or not.
Right, and you've posted that, which is very interesting. And once again, for our viewers, openhawaii.org is about government documents, documents being held by government agencies that we as citizens have the right to see. So we're not really trying to snoop into any cultural group or any ethnic group per se. We're actually taking a look at what government agencies like the Office of Hawaiian Affairs and the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission by record have as public records. And so we obtain through this process of requesting federal documents and then going to the appeals board and then in some cases going to court, we've obtained some documents including the check register of the Native Hawaiian Roll Commission as well as their list of expenses. And so you've done something very simple, just posted it so that people can make comparisons between the checks that were written, the money that went out, and their expenses, and what are the kinds of things people are starting to discover?
Well, the numbers don't add up, and I don't have the numbers with me memorized right now, but there were some big media hits about this, that the numbers just don't add up.
In fact, what's interesting is that this openhawaii.org is now a service to a good number of different groups. For example, a former Hawaii Attorney General, Michael Lilly, went there. And he identified two items. He identified many, but he found two that he wanted to pursue. He found something suspicious, a $600,000 check that had been written to somebody who is a relative of one of the commissioners. And then he found a couple of $100,000 checks. And as the state attorney general, he recalled what the procurement laws were. And he immediately knew that the procurement laws had been violated. As a result, he, as a private citizen today, has issued letters of concern seeking investigation. He's issued these to 3 different state agencies. Now, what's exciting is that that's just the subsidiary work that's going on in the community based upon your work, Joe.
Yeah, well, I mean, knowledge is power. It's funny how people think, we need to do something, we need to roll up our sleeves and take action. And there's a lot of talk about this in the community, but it's really amazing how much a piece of knowledge can actually change the discussion. So.
You know, there's another group as well that has acted on this. In fact, many, but one in particular I think our audience will find quite notable. And a group called Free Hawaii. It is a group that does Native Hawaiian activism. They have a television broadcasting component to their work in which they send out these wonderful videos. They've focused on this information and have gotten this information out to thousands of people now. And what's happening is, you know that expression, eyes on the street, that in places like New York City, you could be very unsafe, except for the fact that from the buildings, in the apartment buildings, looking down, you've got tens of thousands of eyes. So you're actually quite safe. Well, OpenHawaii.org is creating a community of eyes that are looking into government. And the more eyes we have looking, the more accountable government needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want more information. I mean, wouldn't it be great if Hawaii got an A+ for transparency? Can you guess what grade we got from the USPRIG, which is a transparency rating organization? Can anyone guess what the transparency grade was for Hawaii?
I saw it.
You saw it too? Oh, no. Well, it turned out to be a C, and that's up from an F the year before. Maybe it was because of some of the work we did, I don't know, but wouldn't it be great if Hawaii had an A+, because going to Mayor Billy Kenoi on the Big Island, he had a huge scandal with his P card, and a lot of people are asking questions about why don't they just put that information online to begin with? I mean, if you had all this information online, then people would be embarrassed to spend it on things that they weren't supposed to in the first place. So, I mean, that's what I say, just put it online.
When information doesn't have eyes watching it, the government is tempted to get away with things that are not proper. The government is merely made up of people like you and me.
Who are self-interested.
That's right. We've known since the time we were children that when the teacher is there on the playground watching, there's a certain kind of behavior. When she goes away and nobody's watching, it's human nature. And so we're not trying to finger point to anybody in particular. We're trying to deal with the fact that, as Lord Acton put it, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so we want to remove that tendency to have more power through secrecy than people have. Now let's talk just a little bit more about another kind of collaborator we have discovered. We have discovered through the project and our work in transparency at the Grassroots Institute that this is not a partisan or an ideological issue. People from across the political spectrum, whether they are Democrats or Republicans or Libertarians or Independents, whether they are from government or from business, all care about government secrecy and honesty. In fact, we recently had a wonderful event, a panel discussion that was attended by a good number of news media. We tip our hat to them. People like Gina Mangieri of KHON TV2, Rick Desog of Hawaii News Now, Andrew Walden of the Hawaii Free Press, and there were other people. But I am particularly grateful that we had two of our state legislators. We had more in the audience, but two participated in the program, and that's former Senate President Donna Kim and Senate Leader Les Ihara. And what they are doing, and this is so that we don't take credit ourselves, they and many other of our government leaders are responsible for the improvement of our laws about open access, about sunshine.
Well, isn't it funny, though, that I talk to so many people about this transparency stuff, and basically everyone, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican or a Libertarian or Independent, basically everyone agrees that transparency is a good thing. And the more transparency, safe transparency that we have in Hawaii, the better. But if that's the case, then why is it so hard? Well, why do you think it's so hard to get more transparency in the public sphere?
Well, that lack of transparency allows people to indulge in their selfish nature. When somebody is not watching what I'm going to do with these funds I'm responsible for, as a human being, it's easy for me to abuse that. It's easy for me to get together with other human beings who may share my lack of values. And so there's a fundamental role that we need to play as citizens. We need to play the role of holding our government accountable. And that's partly what Grassroots Institute tries to do. We're talking about collaborations. A new collaboration has also developed. We have been able at the Institute to bring together a legal team consisting of individuals from different law firms who are very much interested in government exposure, keeping the government honest. In one case, Grassroots Institute is participating with a mainland law firm, the Judicial Watch, based in Washington, D.C., a very well-known public interest law firm, in order to take one of our state agencies to court. And we'll be letting the public know how that's going to come out, because there's some very important information that the state agency is refusing to give to the public, and we're there requesting it. But you also work with other attorneys, particularly our friends over at the Civil Beat Law Center.
Right. Well, Brian Black has been very helpful in helping to get these requests. He goes above and beyond what's necessary. I mean, he talks you through the request. He thinks about strategy. He thinks about best practices, and he's just been so helpful. And if you have a good case, a good transparency case where they're not giving you the information that they should, he will actually go to bat for you.
Well, that's a good note to end the segment on, and we'll come back shortly thereafter. It's a good note because it's good once in a while to say something good about a lawyer. and there are some fine attorneys that are committed to using the law to keep government accountable. We'll come back and talk a little bit more about some of the work going on in Joe Kent's office at the Grassroots Institute. And right after this short message, I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Don't go away.
This is Alice Lee Hagan, host of ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. My show here at ThinkTech Hawaii is every Thursday from 3 to 4 in the afternoon. I bring in interesting guests from Hawaii, the mainland, and hopefully international guests in the future. Do join us on Thursday from 3 to 4 p.m. ThinkTech Hawaii Business Education Spotlight. Aloha.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia. And by Asia, we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you. Aloha.
Welcome back to Ehana Kako, here every week on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. If you're at your computer or your cell phone, why don't you tweet us at, the tweet is, and I've just forgotten it, ThinkTech HI. That sounds good. ThinkTech HI. And send us your question, participate in the conversation, tell us what you have on your mind. Back to Joe Kent of openhawaii.org at the Grassroots Institute. You know, Joe, we spent a lot of time down at the legislature this year, and it really proved the value of what your department does, research. Were there any particular issues where the ability to research on a national level as well as a local level came to bear upon the kind of testimony we were able to give at the legislature?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we did research on the Maui Hospital. And the Maui Hospital right now is it's a public hospital. It's the only hospital system on Maui, and it's failing. And we did research on best practices about how to save the hospital. And basically, the answer was to privatize it. So to create a public-private partnership between the state and a private entity. And we went to national think tanks and research organizations and asked, what are other states doing? What are other countries doing, actually?
In fact, you actually took a trip to Sandy Springs in Georgia to look at a city that is leading the nation in terms of public-private partnerships. Tell us some of the things you discovered there.
I went to Sandy Springs, and it's the most privatized city in America. They've privatized the parks, they've privatized the water systems and the electric systems, the utilities. They even privatized the government building itself. And so the government building is actually just an office building somewhere. And the people who run the building, the permitting department, et cetera, even the fire department, it's all privatized. And wouldn't you believe it, it's it works better.
How about
And
that?
They have huge surpluses as well.
Well,
It's
I
amazing.
recall that your research actually helped me on several occasions as I was consulting legislators during this last session. And at one point, during a committee hearing, one of the legislators made made a very strong claim, that public-private partnerships for hospitals only take place in rural, poor areas across the nation. And quickly you were able to get me the information that that was
Right.
simply not the case.
Well, yeah, for example, in Orange County, California.
And for those who don't know, Orange County is not a poor place.
Right. Orange County, California has privatized all their public hospitals.
I think that's about 28 hospitals.
Right. That's exactly right. And they've privatized it to huge success. If you read in the papers about Orange County's hospital systems, you'll find glowing reviews and huge surpluses. And so this is a model that works, and it's so exciting that we've actually, we gave commentary at the legislator, and there were policymakers who were saying, oh, that's really interesting what you're saying. I never thought about it like that. And now, amazingly, it's happened. Now it looks like they're going to privatize the hospital.
Well, we certainly hope so. As of the airing date of this broadcast, the legislature has taken the bold move of sending a bill to the governor. It's still up to the governor to sign it into law, or to veto it, or to do nothing and let it pass into law. But such a move has gone further than anything of its kind in at least the recent history of the state, and that's very important, and it's a real victory. You know, we do not by any means at the Grassroots Institute want to take credit for this. It was a large hui of community members, but we did play a very key consulting role, whether it was with officials on Maui or our state legislature, bringing to bear upon this issue the power of research.
Right.
And several times that research made reference to something we call best practices. Best practices that take place in states across the nation where they're meeting their challenges and succeeding in facing their problems.
I was thinking one time about, let's imagine that I was a policymaker or a legislator.
Yes.
And I had the difficult decision about whether to vote for a bill or to vote against it. I think citizens, when they go into the legislature and give their commentary, that's so valuable for policymakers to hear, because they might not have heard that research before. So I heard time and time again, wow, we're so glad that you gave that commentary. We didn't know some of the things you brought up.
That's
And
right.
It's really important to do
Yeah,
that.
I think on one hand, it is important for citizens to come to the government, to go to hearings, and to express themselves from their hearts with great emotion and great passion and so forth. But there's also a role for nerds like us to go there with documentation. I know this will be on your heart, at least the outcome of what happened at a hearing that I participated in which we simply pointed out that we had looked at the practices of 50 states when it came to general excise and sales tax. And in those 50 states, 32 of them have decided that they will not tax food and medicine with the GE tax or excise tax. And we explained that that was the case, but Hawaii was one of the few states that continued to tax the poor. And not only that, taxed people at a rate that where the poor, who buy most of their food directly from retail establishments and pay GE tax at a rate of not 4%, not 10%, but up to 13 to 15% of the income that these poor wage earners or the impoverished have, and that's just not acceptable. As a result, that committee at least reversed its position and sent out a bill to the floor. It died, but it sent a bill to the floor that said that they wanted to have a repeal on the taxing of food and medicine of the poor. Which brings us to something you and I do talk about a lot, and that is how some of these issues that seem so remote, such as secrecy in government, or tax policy, or applying research and best practices, actually impact the poor and the most destitute in society.
I mean, the reason I got into this in the first place was because I cared so deeply about the homeless issue. I was living on Maui, and rents were going up.
And you were almost homeless.
I was almost homeless, right. And I saw my friends becoming homeless. These are bright people who had jobs and worked hard, and they were opting to live out of their cars instead, or get a tent and live in the bushes and things like this. And I thought, what's going on here? And so I started doing more research, and I found that actually, if you were really serious about wanting to help the homeless in a real way, then rather than treating the symptom, you would ask, where is the problem coming from?
That's right.
And I think a lot of the problems actually stem from misdirected policies.
I think you're right, and there may not be enough attention to that. I think there's a lot of good attention to research that shows individual reasons people wind up homeless or in poverty, from mental health challenges to disruptions in their family life, whatever it may be. And there are organizations trying to help them at that level. But very little attention goes to the relationship between policies that are made regarding our taxes, our economy, our business regulation, and how that all actually influences homelessness and poverty.
Yeah.
For example, minimum wage. Have you seen the growing tent city that's down there near Kaka'ako, near the medical school? It's tragic to see the families that are living, many of them in the streets and on the sidewalks and so forth. And I'm not proposing this as a solution, but I just want to show the way policy can impact this. I talked to a few of them, and many of them would be willing to work for $5 or $6 an hour, or $3 or $4 on a Saturday afternoon at a business that needed somebody to help move boxes around or something. But it's against the law, because we have a growing minimum wage law, which many businesses think is ineffective and actually results in unemployment. But that law impacts, and the research has shown across the nation, the availability of housing and the ability of the poor to live and survive in society. There are many people who would say, yes, I'll work for $5 an hour rather than $0 an hour. And again, I don't want to reduce a complex issue just to one image, but that's one example.
But when you have so many, 20, 30 of these similar kinds of issues that affect society in one way and then affects the poor in another way, it adds up. And like, you know, the homelessness rate in Hawaii is now #1. I mean, we're the #1 most homeless per capita in the nation. We're also the #1 in welfare benefits. We're also the #1 in affordable housing and all these. And so you have to ask, if people say, oh, we need more affordable housing for homeless, well, we have the most in the nation.
Well, this is clearly a setup for a sequel, Joe.
Yeah, I guess so.
And we'll have to come back again and talk with our viewers about the way real policy change at the governmental level, at the economic level, can impact the quality of life for everyone, particularly the poor and homeless. My guest today has been Grassroots Institute team member Joe Kent, head of the OpenHawaii.org project, in which we keep government accountable by exposing secrets to make them known to all. I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute, saying mahalo to all of you watching and to the terrific team at ThinkTechHawaii.com. Until next week, aloha.